Hello, I'm Dango Rose. Welcome to the Mountaineer Podcast, where everybody's listening. The Mountaineer brings you the latest news of the Peak-to-Peak region, in print, online, through our podcast, social media, and special publications. Now, listen in to the latest news of the area with our local journalists.
Welcome back to the Mountaineer Podcast, where everybody's listening. I'm Barbara Hardt.
And I'm Doug Armitage. Thanks for joining us. This month's featured music is provided to us by the Magic Beans. Scott Hatchie on guitar and vocals, Casey Russell on keyboard and vocals, Chris Duffy on bass and vocals, and Cody Wales on drums. This song is taken from their 2018 studio album, Casino Cabaret, which you can stream along with their other albums, including their latest, Unzipped, wherever you listen to music.
This episode is brought to you by Brightwood Music, Hart's Backhoe, Kaleidoscope Fine Arts Gallery, Very Nice Brewing Company, and of course, the Mountaineer newspaper.
Our first music story for this week is brought to you by Jamie Lammers, who will be interviewing local musician Mark Kuban.
Hello, my name is Jamie Lammers, and this is my interview with local musician Mark Kuban.
My name is Mark Kuban. I'm a guitar player, a singer, songwriter from St. Louis, Missouri.
And I hear that you are performing some shows very soon.
I'm going to be playing at it was formerly the Last Stand Tavern under new management from the folks that actually own the Wonderview Cafe.
And when can we expect those shows?
The upcoming shows that I've got a show on the day after Thanksgiving on November 25th. I've got one coming up after that on December 9th. And then in December, the last show is going to be December 23rd. So every other Friday, 6 to 8 o'clock, possibly 9 if folks want to stay for an extra hour.
How did you get started in music? What was some of your musical background? Who inspired you along the way? All that kind of stuff. How did it all begin?
Sure. My gosh. So I was musically inclined as a young child. I actually performed in Peter Pan when I was only 5 years old at the Muni Theater in St. Louis. And then my mom and my Aunt Sue bought me my first guitar. I feel a little old saying they got it from the Sears catalog, but they literally got my first guitar from the Sears catalog when I was 11 years old. Growing up in St. Louis, Missouri, I had a lot of influences, just the outside sounds from the street musicians. And then with my parents, either at the pubs or at stadium events, we would hear the horn sections or we would hear blues music, Zydeco music, classical music, rock and roll music outside the St. Louis stadiums or outside St. Louis Blues hockey game. And then I went to Visual and Performing Arts High School in St. Louis, which was a big influence, made some great friends coming up there. And then probably the biggest influence in my life, meeting him later when I was 18 years old, was my father. My father had a big band called the Bob Kuban and the N-Men. In the 60s, his band achieved national notoriety in the top 10 in Billboard charts, and in 1965, I believe they charted out around number 9 on Billboard charts. So he was a national artist with his band, and his friends were a huge influence as well.
Along with your father and his band, were there any other big influences that stuck out to you along the way?
There were. I actually, when I was a young guy, when I was 18, 19 years old, I actually had the chance to book a local venue called Cicero's Basement Bar, which is now Blueberry Hills Duck Room, with a lot of famous artists that have played. But by doing that at such a young age, I got the chance to play with a gentleman by the name of Johnny Johnson. maybe you heard of Johnny B. Good. He was the keyboard player for Chuck Berry, and then also Chuck Berry himself getting to play on stage with Chuck at a young age, and then Lonnie Mack, Buddy Guy. I was able to open up when I was in my 20s down on the Landing in St. Louis. These gentlemen were, first of all, Chuck Berry is who Chuck Berry is, the godfather and the father of rock and roll. And then Johnny Johnson was just a gentle person, gentle soul, had incredible rhythms and melodies with his piano playing. And really, when I was a young man, was able to find my own in regards to playing in the band, because sometimes you're showing, playing rhythm, and sometimes you're standing out playing lead. And Johnny taught me how to float in and out of that as a band member.
What would you say were the main styles of music that kind of stuck with you, or do you really have a style that you stick to?
I would say the basis. I think this was the basis of what the Rolling Stones were trying to get to, the Yardbirds were trying to get to. Blues music. Blues, 4/4 count, 3-chord song, simplistic lead, but I think it's the blues. Blues is certainly the foundation, but when I went to school at Webster University, it was for jazz, and then as you get a little fancier, funk, soul, and then in regards to my writing style, it's more of a folk, soul writing style with a blues background, if I was going to try to describe myself, but definitely in the blues genre.
So you said you started performing from an earlier age, from like your teen years and onward. What have been some of your favorite aspects about being able to play live and share music with all of these influences and with people in the audience?
Well, at the beginning, I think being on stage with friends in a band, it was more of just being popular or doing things that you enjoyed doing with your friends. And then playing from the basement on out to getting actually on a stage, getting fluent being on stage, and then being able to play some of the venues that we've been able to play. I've been able to play some great theaters in St. Louis, some great venues throughout the Midwest. I think just sharing a smile on stage to somebody in the audience and connecting with that person, that's really what it's all about. It's just the connection.
And in general, is there anything that you hope audience members will take away from your shows when they come and see you?
I hope they have a good time. It's about sharing and remembering to me. My shows, since I've been doing this a little bit for a while, I've been playing since the late 70s as a teenager at parties, and then hitting venues at 80s and popping out a little bit in the 90s on some major shows. It was great to perform with the crowds and having fun, just getting them to remember some of the old songs, introducing to some of the new songs. Maybe in the 70s and 80s and the 90s they didn't listen to this type of music, but it hits a string with them now. A lot of traditional standard blues, but also blues genre standards and popular songs that are out there today.
And in regards to other memorable experiences that you've had throughout the years, what are some that have kind of stuck out?
As far as memorable experiences, because of my father and who he was, I had some memorable experience backstage with myself, but also with people that knew him. I think one of the most memorable experiences I've ever had was when Mickey Dolenz, who's also a drummer, my father, Bob Kuban, is a drummer, but Mickey Dolenz, we were backstage for a rock and roll channel called KC95 in St. Louis, and I believe it was Kevin Cronin, Charlie Daniels, and then Mickey Dolenz came out and actually sang like 5 bars of my dad's hit song, The Cheater. And that was just a unique experience to have other people admire who my dad was. And I was just a kid backstage at that point. And then had the great experience of having a regular show down on the landings in St. Louis where touring bands like the Red Hot Chili Peppers and Flea with his big fuzzy cowboy chaps would come up and check out our shows, and we would go down to Mississippi Nights and check out their shows. But back then, the entire St. Louis music scene was just a big community. And that's quite frankly what I've found in Colorado as well, is it's a big musical community here.
And yeah, I don't know, is there just anything else about upcoming music or upcoming shows or anything in general that you want to add?
Sure. I've got a new single that's out. It's on my website at reverbnation.com. Last name Kuban. It's Kuban1, but the truth, and a new EP that will be putting new test singles out coming. I intermix that with my songs, but really my songs, the songwriting, the music that I play out is a lot of jazz, blues, folk, take you through the generations of 60s, 70s, and 80s, and hopefully you hear some music that you remember, and hopefully it brings back a good memory as well. My dad is entered in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I didn't meet him till I was 18 years old, but I had been playing music the entire time. I knew all the same musician friends that he did. We just didn't know each other. When I was 16, I got to play with Bo Diddley, and I was underage at the club with my girlfriend, but because I was a musician, the owner knew me, let me come in, because I knew Bo was playing that night, and I actually got to sit in with him for a song, and that actually was the beginning of breaking on, boy, he looks like Bob. Putting it together before I did. He's got his song in St. Louis, The Cheater. First time I ever played with him was in between a doubleheader for the St. Louis Cards and the Chicago Cubs. And we opened up for Tommy James and the Shondells, Wooly Bully and Moni Moni, if you remember that. So it was that type of stuff. But Dad was straight edge and I wasn't. So he did cover tunes. I did original music in St. Louis, and we kind of just did our own thing. Well, thanks for the interest, Jamie. It was very nice speaking with you. I did want to try to promote that new place because my friend Martina's the manager. She's let me play whether she was at the Mine Shaft or just so you know, I played the Gold Mill at the Argo. They did a summer series right out of the pandemic and that. But just been staying local in and around Ned, Idaho Springs, and then been doing this for Martina.
Thank you so much for coming on board. This was really great.
Tell Barb thank you again for all the support again for the music community. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much to Mark for coming on board and joining us for the podcast. If you want to see him performing live, you can catch him at the Last Stand Tavern, now under new management as the Canyon Tavern at 32138 Highway 72 on Coal Creek Canyon on Friday, December 23rd, 2022 at 6 p.m.
Thanks, Jamie. Now to the news desk. In this week's Mountaineer, Christopher Kelly reports on the Caribou Village Solstice celebration, and Julie Twiss shares a story on the Gilpin Library being awarded funding from the Alan Green Memorial Grant.
Friends, the Gilpin County Democrats hold monthly meetings in person on the fourth Thursday of each month at the Gilpin County Library from 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. For more information, contact gilpindemschair@gmail.com.
The Gilpin County Republican meetings are on the first Thursday of the month at 7 p.m. at the Gilpin County Library. You can contact them at gcrcgilpin@gmail.com. For our next story, Jamie Lammers interviews local DJ Warren G.
Hello, my name is Jamie Lammers, and this is my interview with local DJ Warren G.
My name is Warren. I've been living up in the mountains for about 5 years. I'm originally from Wisconsin. I grew up outside Madison, Wisconsin. I moved here in 2015 to start an extraction business. So that's my main line of work. And that's kind of also when I started getting into DJing.
You mentioned earlier to me that you were more of a DJ than you are a musician. What led you to the path of DJing, and what got you interested in doing it in the first place? How did it all begin, I suppose?
So I've always loved music. I have a lot of history and experience throwing parties from back in high school to college. One of my good friends, Technicolor, was this club DJ. He was one of my best friends in college. So I'd always have the sound system and he would DJ and we'd throw these super fun parties. From that, I moved to Colorado and I've always just had a lot of music I like to share, and I wouldn't necessarily DJ, but I'd always play music for my friends, whether we're just hanging out or at a party or driving or something. Keeping up on music is just something that I've always done. And so I like to just know different producers, different musicians, and keep up to date with what kind of music they're making. And so I used to also go to a lot of music shows and see new people. So I guess music is just one of my passions. I used to make music on Ableton, and basically I spent so much time turning all the knobs that's on Ableton, and I just never really made anything. I don't have much background in music theory. I don't consider myself a musician in the sense of composing music. I used to be in a punk band and play guitar in middle school and high school. I wrote a few songs, but in terms of actually making electronic music, my time is much more well spent applying organic chemistry to plant extraction, which is what I basically do for a living, make people's products and also make my own products. But that I know how to do. That makes money. It's a great form of income for me. Sitting on the computer trying to make songs is way more daunting for me as a way of making money. So sadly, I just mostly DJ for fun, share music that I like, mix it in ways that I think is just a fun way to present the music. Music, in a sense, has a lot of influence on our emotions. And so as a DJ, you're kind of playing and guiding people's emotions. And so thinking of that in different ways has led me to just become more popular as a DJ. I used to DJ something called ecstatic dance in Boulder, which I think was really cool. I used to DJ and I had a couple shows at Cervantes down in Denver, and it's a bar. People drink and dance. People that go to ecstatic dance, it's encouraged that you don't do any substances, including alcohol. I DJ'd for an ecstatic dance once, and I saw people dance in ways I've never seen, and they were totally sober, and that just was really cool. And so I started getting more into the community as a DJ, DJing more kind of ecstatic mixes where it's not just the same genre. So that's something that I am passionate about, is playing different types of music, different genres, kind of keep things fresh and different, so you're not just listening to the same beat over and over again for the whole time.
Despite the fact that you consider yourself more of a DJ than a musician and you don't perform outside of parties necessarily, you do still have performances.
Yeah, so I will play at different events or parties, a lot of house parties, and then also have an elixir bar in Boulder called Lux Elixirs, where we serve mead and herbal cocktails. We make a lot of non-alcoholic drinks as well. But yeah, I mean, I'll also organize events too. I also like to promote other DJs I know who are actually musicians too. I think I'm just really good at sharing music, and that's why I don't consider myself a musician, but it still is a performance. One thing that I'm trying to get into is I have an electric sitar that I'm trying to incorporate into some of my sets. But again, most of this is for fun. It's not necessarily something that I do to try and make income. At least right now, it's just been a passion of mine.
What sticks out to you in general about being able to DJ and being able to share your passion for music with other people in that way?
I mean, I just love sharing music. A lot of people also have enjoyed my sets, and I play a lot of different music. I think the ecstatic element of playing different genres together is something that isn't really prevalent, and that's where I'd almost say, sadly, some producers or musicians, they can be really good and they can't play anything outside of what they produce, and sometimes that gets boring. And so I really actually appreciate a producer who does a DJ set where they actually play some other people's music, because if it's not something you absolutely love, sadly, some DJs can be boring. And I'd go to say most producers don't know how to DJ because they sit on the computer all day and know how to program music, create instruments. It's a completely different skill set than reading a room and trying to create a party, make people feel good, have fun. And that's something that I think is really fun for me, is just making people have fun by playing music and not necessarily sticking to trying to impress upon my music. It's just like, let's have a good time kind of vibe.
And so you just kind of hope that people take away a sense of fun whenever you come to DJ.
Yeah, and I also don't ever really pre-record my sets. Everything I do is mostly freestyle. So a lot of it is, for me, reading the room, and maybe I'll play a couple different genres depending on the crowd in the beginning to almost get a feel for what people want to hear or what people are used to hearing, and then I'll kind of play off of that. And so a lot of what I do is more so a big experiment of how do people react to different types of music, and then seeing that and playing with that. Some of the music I'd say I play isn't necessarily what people listen to a lot, especially people who listen to the radio or don't have a very defined music spectrum, but I play a lot of stuff that you wouldn't really hear on the radio and things like that. So I also like to kind of push people's uncomfortability with new music and new genres. Most people only like music that they're used to listening to, and there's a certain level of, I've heard this before, I can dance to this. But then when you start playing stuff that people have never heard before at a beat that they've never had ears for, it can be really awesome, or they might just hate your set.
How do you play around the room when you can kind of tell that maybe a crowd isn't as enthusiastic, or when a crowd is more enthusiastic, just in general? What do you think are some of your skill sets in regards to playing the room and seeing how they react?
Yeah, I'd say that kind of a weird thing to describe, but something I've noticed is if you play a song with somebody who really likes that song, it almost sounds like the song sounds better. And then sometimes you play a song and you're with somebody and they don't like that kind of music, it almost doesn't sound as good. And so what I've kind of found is that when I play a song, it almost sounds different based on everyone's interpretation of it. And therein lies, I think, a more philosophical idea that when we're watching somebody perform, there's a lot of reflection and energy happening. Whereas if you like the music, the performer feels that, and then they're able to feed off of that. And when people listening to a performer don't like the music, there's different ways I think people deal with, all right, we're going to play a different song, or we're going to play something that's more upbeat. And so, like I said, I almost listen to the music from a performer's perspective of, do these people like this type of music? And I'll kind of go through things, and then it's almost like, oh, I know they really liked more of a breakbeat, hip-hop, rap music. Maybe I'll go back to songs like that after I get myself into a weird corner where I'm like, I don't think anybody likes the music I'm playing right now. I'm going to backstep and go back towards what I know people were enjoying earlier. But yeah, I'd say it's a philosophical, intuitive skill of trying to figure out what kind of music people like based on their gestures, like dancing or not dancing, or standing there or not. So I think there's just a lot of feedback in that way. And I'm an extremely analytical person, so I think it's really interesting to see different people's reactions and also not really take it personally and just not letting playing one song that didn't vibe that great ruin my set. I can always change things.
You mentioned you try and play a variety of stuff just to make sure that the crowd's engaged and maybe they experience stuff they hadn't really heard before. Are there still styles that you focus on more as a DJ, or do you really say you have a really broad spectrum when it comes to the kind of stuff you try and focus on?
For example, I DJ'd a wedding one time, and it was one of the worst experiences I've ever had DJing because people wanted to listen to a lot of regular wedding songs. I'm not great at playing what people want to hear. I'd say that I really enjoy pushing the boundaries on what we perceive music to be. So I personally play a lot of music that I really like. And sometimes people don't like it as much, but I've mostly had a lot of inspiration from psychedelic and down-tempo bass music just because there's so many different new sounds out there. There's a lot of amazing producers out there that have some really cool sounds that they've created. And then I also really like deep house. That's almost kind of like more trancey. There's a lot of music that's actually based off of shamanic drumming and different ceremonial aspects. And that's just the BPMs of the music. And so there's also, I think, a lot of magical things that happen when people listen to a certain genre for a given period of time where they almost enter almost like a trance state where they're really encapsulated by the music and really feeling it. And that's when people generally start to have a lot more fun, is when everyone's on that same vibration. So yeah, I'd say that's some things I'd like to do.
You have something coming up at the end of December at Howlin' Wind Brewing, is that correct?
Yeah, so I'll be the last act of the night at Howlin' Brewery for New Year's Eve on the 31st. And like I said, I have an elixir bar. I also set up sound systems. I rent sound systems out for other events. I basically accumulate a lot of things because I've decided to have a camp at Burning Man, and one of the main aspects of that is basically having a lot of entertainment things. So I have 2 pretty decent sized sound systems. I'll rent them out and set them up, and that's what I'm doing for Howlin' Wind, is I'm also setting up my sound system there and DJing on it. So yeah, I'm excited about that. Most of the stuff I do has been down in Boulder and Denver, so I'm really excited to do something up in the mountains and be a little more known up there, just because I live up there, but there's not a whole lot of events that I go to up there, mostly because I play electronic music and listen to a lot of electronic music. I'd say most of the stuff up there is live music, different bands, which I also enjoy. I just typically end up going to more electronic shows.
Is there anything else just in general that you want to add about the show, or about your DJing, or just anything else in general about Anything coming up?
I will say I have no idea what I'm going to play, so I'm excited to feel it out just because I've never played for people up in the mountains. I did an ecstatic dance in Netherlands a month ago, which was really cool. But yeah, I mean, I'm excited and slightly nervous just because it's going to be a different scene than I'm used to, and we'll see what the mountain folk respond to when it comes to electronic music. So I'm excited for that.
Yeah, I don't know. I think those are all the big questions I have on my end.
Cool. I think I mostly covered everything as far as my offerings of helping throw events, renting out sound systems, DJing. And I know a ton of other DJs, so if people are ever interested in wanting to host an event or throw an event, I'm always happy to help curate other DJs and listen to what the ideal music or genre is, just because I'm a pretty well-connected person to the communities in Boulder and Denver when it comes to DJing and events. If people want to find my music, you can go to SoundCloud and search for Warren G. It's Warren, Warren, and then G is spelled J-I. And then I have a few different mixes there, different genres, and I'll kind of continue adding to that.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, for sure.
Appreciate it.
Thank you so much to Warren for coming on board and joining us for the podcast. If you want to see him freestyle live, be sure to check him out at Howland Wind Brewing on 51A Main Street in Rollinsville on Saturday, December 31st, 2022 at 11 p.m. after a performance by Steepland String Band at 7 p.m.
Thanks, Jamie. Did you know every week you can check out the latest Backdoor Theater movie on their website at www.thebackdoortheater.org. In other news from the Mountaineer, Pet of the Year winner is Blue. James DeWalt authors an article on Life in Nature, Winter's Home, and Mindy Leary is buzzing with the latest on herbal pot shops in the area.
It's almost the new year, and Brightwood Music in Netherlands can help you pick out the instrument you've been dreaming of to spend your holiday cash on. They carry anything you need for the aspiring musician to the advanced performer. They also carry new and used instruments, strings, reeds, books, accessories, and more. Brightwood Music is family-owned and operated and has been a Netherlands staple for all of your music needs since 2009. They are located at 20 East Lakeview Drive, Unit 109 in Netherlands, and can be reached at 303-258-8863. Check them out on Facebook at Brightwood Music.
Peak-to-peak musicians and artists, the Mountain Ear is looking for you. We're looking for our February featured musician. Would you like a feature story in the Mountain Ear print, online, and podcast? These are all completed through phone calls, emails, or occasional in-person interviews with our journalists. Interested? Check out our contact information at the end of the podcast.
And if you're interested in being a podcast sponsor, we have sponsorships available starting at $30 per podcast. The podcast reaches a different audience than the print or online edition of The Mountaineer.
Did you know the Gilpin County and Netherland area seniors have their schedule of events in print in the Mountaineer each week? Looking for meals, movies, grocery shopping, and more? It's right there between pages 4 and 9 each week. Friends, don't forget to pick up this week's edition of The Mountaineer in print in multiple locations across the Peak to Peak for the latest news from Allens Park to Central City and Blackhawk, with all of the communities and canyons in between. All editions of the Mountaineer podcast, print newspaper, and the latest news are always available on our website at www.themountaineer.com. To contact The Mountaineer, email info@themountaineer.com or call 303-810-5409. And that's all for this episode of the Mountaineer Podcast. Thanks, everyone. I'm Doug Armitage.
And I'm Barbara Hardt. Until next time, thanks for listening.
It's gonna be different, gonna make a change. Next thing you know, it's more of the same old thing. Last night, got a little crazy. Tomorrow's here to settle score. Recollection is a little hazy. Next time there won't be no doubt.
And that's it for our show. Subscribe online to get more access to more news, weekly updates to our community calendar, and a link to our YouTube channel by visiting themountaineer.com. Be sure to use the coupon code PODCAST when subscribing for a 10% discount, only available to our listeners. If you are in the local Peak to Peak area, be sure to pick up a print edition of The Mountaineer at a local business. I'm Dango Rose. Thank you for listening.